Hello everybody, this is GeneralJannis, and today in Chaos Tactics I'm looking at the Rubric Marines, taking a small mental health break from looking at more death card units. I will of course continue also that route, but now looking from the Thousand Sons, the Rubric Marines, and now as we will see they have play quote unquote plague weapons. So with no further ado, let's get started. So today, the 24th of June, waiting for my birthday present to myself, the Leviathan box set. Looking forward to getting the book and also the mission deck cards could be handy on the games. But as I said in this video, looking at the Rubric Marines, looking at their data sheet, comparing the damage output of their weapons. Now they also have free weapons like any other power level units here. Then looking at the leaders and other ways to buff them. Looking at some squads and then comparing the squad's damage output buffed with the leaders and without, and comparing them, for example, to the Scarab Terminators, and also just a quick comparison also with the death card units I already covered, and then finally the durability of the rubrics. So looking at the Rubric Marines datasheet, we have a 5-inch move profile now, and otherwise it's quite basic toughness 4 marine profile, but of course with the caveat that the Rubric Marines have the 5+ invulnerable save. Always helpful to have some invulnerable save in the game. They generate 1 Cabal point per unit. You cannot get to 2 if you add the icon as you could before. The icon of flame does something different now, but 1 Cabal point that you are gathering up to be able to do the Doom Bolts or take away the armor saves from an enemy unit that could be really strong. The points have been decreased for the Rubric Marines compared to 9th edition, so we have 95 points for a squad of 5, 190 points for 10 rubrics. So they are at 19 points per model, and then as all the units, the war gear, all the weapons there are the choices are free inside the cost. So that's quite a cheap unit now. Their ability is also strong, the Bringers of Change. So every time they do a ranged attack, they reroll once to wound. So basically, all their weapons for the Rubric Marines are like the previous plague weapons for Death Card that I was enjoying using at least. If the rubrics are attacking an enemy on an objective marker, then they can reroll all to wound, and with some of the combos that will be really strong to, let's say, get 6s or something like this. So natural rerolling wound rolls, and maybe even the whole wound roll for the ranged weapons. The icon of flame, as I said, doesn't give Cabal points, but it makes that critical wounds basically 6s to wound. Then the attack has 1 additional AP. So a little bit more AP there for the 6s to wound, but you need to keep track of. I kind of dislike this type of rules where you have to keep a lot of track of this is with AP2 and this is with AP3. But okay, it's a buff as well here. In general, if we look at their weapons, there has been a loss of AP since the 9th edition. So now the AP -1 for Inferno bolt weapons and the Warp Flamers. Previously, it was a trademark AP -2 for the Thousand Sons. Now everything is AP -1. If you are doing 6s to wound, they become AP -2 like previously. The Aspiring Sorcerer now has a warp smite attack that is anti-infantry 4+ and devastating wounds with a high AP and re-rolling the wound rolls. Then you could be getting some nice mortal wounds out of it. It's only 2 attacks, and then the war gear options for the normal rubrics, they can either take the bolt gun or the warp flamer, and then the 1 Soul Reaper cannon in the squad, regardless if it's 5 or 10. The Soul Reaper cannon also lost quite a lot of AP, but it's 6 attacks, strength 6, AP -1, damage 1. There is no longer some rules to be immune to battle shock or morale for the Dusty Boys. So now looking to the rubrics weapons baseline damage output. In this table, you will see the damage output versus a variety of targets I'm simulating for 10th edition. If you see a number like 4,5, it means 4.5. So the comma is the decimal point in these tables. And we can see first the Inferno Bolt Gun, and then I added if the Inferno Bolt Gun is the next line is if it's attacking a unit on an objective, so you get more damage there. The first two columns, it shows the average damage versus the infantry targets from Thermaguns up to Blightlord Terminators, and then the other one is average damage versus vehicles from the Rhino up to a big scary Imperial Knight. And we see the Infernal Bolt Gun does, let's say, half a wound on average across the infantry, but not so much, of course, as expected versus vehicles. The Warp Flamer nearly does double the damage versus infantry, also double the damage versus vehicles compared to the bolt guns. You get auto hit, you get more attacks on average with the same profile auto hitting. So therefore, you naturally do much more damage here, but you have to be at 12-inch range to do so. The Soul Reaper cannon should probably be an auto take on the squads, so double the damage. Let's say 2 wounds on average versus the infantry, 1 wound versus the vehicles. If it's in objective, you get a bit higher. If we look at the rubrics in close combat, this is not, let's say, their area of expertise, so not much damage in melee. If we look at the aspiring sorcerer, their sergeant, let's say, the warp smite can do some damage versus double the damage of an infernal bolt gun versus infantry and vehicles here. Especially good versus, let's say, it's better versus infantry with its rules. And the force weapon in close combat also, of course, a better weapon, strength 6, AP -1, damage D3, and of course it's a better melee weapon than the rubrics have. So looking at the leaders that are available to buff rubrics, we have access to 4 leaders that can be added to Rubric Marines, as I counted, and these are the type of characters you probably anyway need in your army to generate the Cabal points and to do more of the psychic attacks, etc. So we can add Ariman, he's 110 points, we can add him to rubrics. And I should also point out that these leaders, they cannot join, let's say, other things than rubrics. They can't be added to Terminator squads. So basically, if you want to keep them protected, you probably need the rubrics to put them there. So Ariman, for 150 points, he gives +1 to wound for all the weapons in the squad he's joining. This is very nice, especially for the, let's say, the warp flamers. Auto hitting and then +1 to wound and re-rolling wounds naturally for the rubric. So already here we can see much better synergies in the Thousand Sons index here. If we look at the Exalted Sorcerer, he's 90 points. He adds he gives 4+ invulnerable saves to the squad he's leading, making the rubrics something of a mini Terminator with at least 3+ save, 4+ invulnerable save. And he can also reanimate dead rubric bodyguards, let's say on a 2+ in his own command phase. If he hits a 6, he can bring two destroyed rubrics back. So that's a quite nice combo as well. It doesn't buff their attacking abilities, but a good buff to their durability. If we also look at the Infernal Master, 75 points, then the weapons where he's leading, they get sustained hits. This doesn't really help the Warp Flamers because they are auto-hitting, but it can be adding a lot of shooting from the Infernal Bolt Guns. Probably a good combination to keep the Infernal Master with a squad of rubrics with bolt guns. Finally, the Sorcerer for 85 points gives the weapons lethal hits. This doesn't benefit, again, the auto-hitting Warp Flamers. And I think in this comparison, since the rubrics already have let's say the natural buffs to reroll wound rolls, either rerolling wounds of 1 or all the wound rerolls, maybe it's not the strongest combo to do the lethal hits here, but his other ability is also helping them so to be protected if they cannot be shot at something outside of 18 inch. That can be nice for a long range squad. Probably, as I said, not a good fit with Warp Flamers, but it could be something for your Inferno Bolt Gun squads. Other possible buffs and synergies and combos, the Demon Prince for the Thousand Sons, he has also some nice auras. and a psyker unit within 6 inches of the demon prince, basically he can transform the weapons of the squad to get the precision ability. So once per battle, you could be wiping out a character that is leading another infantry. That can be really strong with some combos here. And within 6 inches of the demon prince, you could gain the stealth ability. That means that you are -1 to be hit, further improving the durability here. Of course, the demon prince, he cannot join the squads, but he will be, let's say, if you can keep him protected, and somehow the other units can benefit from his auras here. Magnus himself, a strong upgrade on his datasheet for the 10th edition. His auras can give the time flux that he naturally has can give +2 inches to the movement, bringing the rubrics up to 7 inches. And one of the auras he can select in his command phase, Lord of the Planet of the Sorcerers. Within there, you can get +1 to hit and +1 to wound with psychic weapons. And this is basically the Warp Smite and the Force Stave. But there are some more shenanigans for the Thousand Suns that we will see right now, because some of the stratagems are really strong and a good combination with all the rules. And especially, in my opinion, this Ensorcered Infusion stratagem really stands out. In your shooting phase, you select a psyker unit that has not shot, and then all the Inferno Bolt weapons this unit has, they get the psychic keyword, and they get also an improvement of the strength of 5. So this is a very strong synergy. The psychic weapons have good synergy with Thousand Suns army and detachment rules, because in every command phase you decide what extra ability your psychic weapons will have, and that can be lethal hits, sustained hits, or devastating wounds. And devastating wounds can be really strong. Let's say a full squad with Inferno Bolt guns, devastating wounds. You could be racking up some very big damage, especially when you reroll the wound rolls from the rubrics. Of course, if you have a big squad of Scarab Terminators with combi Inferno Bolters, probably you will get more value there, but I will look at that at another point. This can also further be combined with a devastating sorcery stratagem. This is also one command point and one unit that in the shooting phase again. And here it allows you to reroll the complete hit roll and the complete wound roll. So then these two in combination, I will show you the damage output from the Inferno Bolt guns. Very, very strong combos here. And then some of the enhancements, of course, also helping the Umbralefic Crystal enhancement. If you give it to the leader of the Rubric squad, for example, a 10-man Flamer squad, for example, with a sorcerer or an exalted sorcerer, then you can teleport them and do your shooting, and take something out maybe that is keeping an objective. So based on the previous analysis, I think the squad variations you would probably thinking of, or I'm thinking of, is a 10-man basically bolter oriented squad, including one Soul Reaper cannon and the icon, because it's free, of course. The bolt pistol for the aspiring champion here, and here I will be checking, for example, how much the damage output is improved when we have Ahriman there, +1 to wound, or the Infernal Master to give sustained hits. And the Exalted Sorcerer, of course, can always help their. It doesn't help their damage output, but it gives them 4+ invul. And then the 10-man Warp Flamer squad, also 190 points. You could include here also again the Soul Reaper cannon and the icon. The Aspiring Sorcerer probably give a Warp Flamer pistol here, so you have Warp Flamers all around. This is still 190 points. Ahriman, very strong here, +1 to wound. Exalted Sorcerer to give them the durability. The Infernal Master sustained hits would be a waste on the Warp Flamer squad. And then, of course, a 5-man minimum squad to generate just Cabal points and maybe hold the backfields. You can add, of course, Soul Reaper cannons here and icons and what have you, but you can also keep them cheap for 95 points. So in this table now, I'm looking at these rubric squads, their damage output. It's not point corrected. I am not assuming here that the enemy is standing on an objective, so you only here reroll once to wound. And I don't include when I add the leaders, I just look at the buff of the rubrics weapons. I haven't added in this table the damage of Ahriman himself in melee, for example, or his psychic attacks. So starting off with the 10-man bolter squad with one Soul Reaper cannon. When it's shooting at 24 inches, we see here we can take out 10 Thermaguns, so we can kill 6.5 Necron warriors, 2 killed intercessors, almost 1 killed Terminator, and then 1-2 wounds on vehicles here. Adding, when we add Ahriman, we get around 25% more damage output versus the infantry. So here we have 4 wounds on the Terminators, but we also are doing almost twice the damage, or 70% more damage versus the vehicles. Normally the bolters will be struggling with their wound roll, but +1 to wound from Ahriman would be helping out the result here. And if we see the Infernal Master, he gives sustained hits. He gives 25% overall damage increase. Not so strong versus the vehicles, but if you're shooting against infantry, he gives you nice buff also for the shooting. The volume of attacks becomes nice. Then, if we look at the combo with taking the bolter squad with the Ensorcer, the Infusion, and the Devastating Sorcery, 2 command points here, you would be doing, you can see here, for example, almost wiping 5 intercessors here, definitely killing 2 Terminators, 7.5 wounds here, and also for vehicles you're starting to do the damage. If you have Ahriman in the squad or the Infernal Master here, you can see a very strong combinations here, taking out 3 Terminators with the Infernal Master, and with Ahriman you do nice damage also versus the vehicles. Of course, you need the 2 command points here, and to have selected, I'm assuming here you have selected Devastating Wounds to affect your psychic weapons. Then moving on to the Rubric Warp Flamer squad, I've added 1 Soul Reaper cannon here, and they have to be, of course, to 12-inch to do some serious damage. Here you can see you can basically wipe out some units of chaff infantry. You can kill 10 Necron warriors. You can wipe out 5 intercessors, 2 Terminators with no further buffs. And here you can see adding Ahriman here, +1 to wound, is a very strong synergy with the Warp Flamers. So here you will be killing 3 Terminators shooting. You will be doing 7-9 wounds against vehicles, almost taking out a Rhino here with the Warp Flamers and Ahriman. And then, of course, for a lot of these combinations, if you do the Cabal points to remove armor saves from your enemy, then your damage will be much more increased, especially for something like the vehicles that don't have invulnerable saves. They will be really going down here. And then in melee, of course, the rubrics, it's not the area of expertise here. You can see here a couple of wounds here and there, and Ahriman, of course, helps a bit, and then Infernal Master with sustained hits also helps, but it's not, of course, in melee you want your rubrics. And in this table, the last of the damage output tables, here I'm looking at the point corrected damage output, and this is per 100 points, and here I'm including the leader's additional damage. It's not fair to add, let's say, Ahriman for 110 points and just take his 110 points as buffing the rubrics. He also comes with his own melee and his own psychic weapons and things like that. I've added all of this here, and we're starting off here with the first line is previously what you saw in the previous table, the rubric bolters, but here it's versus, let's say, the infantry and the on average versus infantry and the vehicles monsters I'm calculating. And here we can see the rubric bolter squad does 2.4 damage per 100 points, comparing to something like Scarab Terminators with a Soul Reaper cannon and a missile. This is 1.9. And then below you see, for example, Plague Marines, Blight Lords, and Death Shroud. So from the get-go, the Rubric Marines with the bolt guns are just have higher damage output than other units with no further buffs included here. And then we see a 12-inch range and melee, and the combination of shooting and melee. If we add Ahriman, he costs 110 points more. So the long range shooting basically gets diluted per 100 points. And but we see some increase on versus vehicles at short range, and also he's buffing their melee because he himself has nice melee capabilities with the black staff. The Infernal Master is a good combo here, especially when you are coming into at least 18 inches, so you can use the psychic abilities. The Infernal Master also have some nice shooting abilities. And then if you use the strat combo, you can see some good damage, especially within 18 inches at least, versus the infantry and vehicles. And when we see the rubric, the Warp Flamer squad, they excel at the 12-inch range shooting, and you can see here five wounds on average versus the GeneralJannis infantry per 100 points. And if you compare to the Scarab Terminators or Plague Marines or Blight Lord's Death Shroud, they are just much better, much higher damage output. And then, of course, when we come into melee, they are not super strong. And here we can see that that the Scarab Terminators and all the Death Guard units are better in general than the rubrics. Now taking a look at the durability, this is also point corrected per 100 points. So basically this is showing for a variety of weapons you see as the rows from the Stormbolter up to, let's say, a to a Redemptor Plasma Incinerator. Here, how many attacks, how many Stormbolters at half range, for example, does it take to kill 100 points of Rubric Marines? And in the first, let's say, when we see the Rubric Marines with their 5+ invul, and then on the next column I included, if we add the Exalted Sorcerer, then they get a 4+ invul, and then comparing to Plague Marines and Intercessors, and then comparing to the Scarab Terminators and the Blight Lords and Death Shroud Terminators. So when we look at the rubrics baseline, they have a better durability than the normal Intercessor Marine equivalent. They have for the strength 4-5 weapons, they have less durability than Plague Marines. But as soon as we start going up to things with some more AP, at least AP2 and above, then the rubrics have better durability thanks to their invul save. Then the toughness doesn't mean so much. And if we add the Exalted Sorcerer, he buffs up their durability here. So you see on the bottom, I just added, let's say, the average of all these weapons that it would take to kill 100 points of Rubric Marines here, and you see the improvement here. The Scarab Terminators are more durable per point as expected for Terminators, and we also see here in this comparison that the Scarab Terminators are more durable than Death Shroud, but the most durable Terminators here are the Blight Lord Terminators. So reaching to the summary and final thoughts, overall good rules for the rubrics with their built-in rerolls to wound, good at clearing out objectives with their shooting because then they reroll everything to wound. In general, very good synergies with the army and detachment rules and the stratagems, and also very good strong leader buffs and synergies available. From the characters you probably always want to include in your Thousand Sons army, like Ahriman, Exalted Sorcerer, and the Infernal Master. Those were basically the holy trio of Thousand Sons competitive lists. And they can only join rubrics, so you probably need the rubrics in your area list also to keep your characters protected. And they also, as we have seen in this analysis, they benefit a lot from having the leaders there. So that's really strong. And I think it's a marked difference from when I was reading the Death Guard. Let's say reading the Death Guard index, trying to find some good synergies. It's more difficult to find something good here. With a Thousand Sons, it's easier to find some good synergies and some good combos, and a lot of interesting combinations here. So the ideas that come to mind: a Warp Flamer squad with Ahriman is a strong choice. A Warp Flamer squad with an Exalted Sorcerer and maybe the Umbralefic Crystal enhancement to teleport them and be able to do the shooting, stealing some objective, pushing some enemy out there where they don't expect it. Then Infernal Bolter squad, keeping it more like a shooting from far with the Infernal Master to give added volume of fire with the sustained hits, and the stratagems that we saw can do a good combo for a lot of devastating wounds, for example. And of course, as always, interesting to have a small squad of Rubric Marines to generate Cabal points for the Thousand Sons shenanigans. Now it's only 95 points to generate one Cabal point, And my major concern right now is I only have 25 rubrics in my collection. I probably need to grab a box more or two. So this concludes the video. Let me know what you think about the rubrics. If you want to discuss further, please visit and join the Discord channel. There are areas for Death Card discussions. There is another area for Thousand Sons discussions, for example. If you want to support my efforts to bring you all this warhammering, math hammering analysis here, please visit my Patreon page, and you can also become a YouTube member to support there. And with these words, GeneralJannis is signing out. Stay safe out there, and bye-bye.